Counties across the Southeast are quietly stepping up enforcement on stormwater regulations, and property managers are getting blindsided. We've seen HOAs get hit with notices of violation requiring massive remediation within 30 to 90 days. Most of them don't have the funds budgeted, and residents end up paying the price. Now, here's the unfair part. You are legally responsible for these systems, but you were never trained on them. No one taught you how ponds fail or why pipes collapse or what actually triggers a violation. And yet, when something breaks, when it floods, when it erodes, when the inspector shows up, it's on you. I'm Jack Moran. I've spent years helping properties just like yours avoid exactly this situation. And today, I want to show you why this matters more than you probably realize. And more importantly, what you can actually do about it. Stay with me. Look, if you're watching this, you're probably managing properties with ponds, retention basins, drainage systems, some kind of stormwater infrastructure. And I'd be willing to bet you've got about 15 other things on your plate that feel more urgent right now. Resident complaints, board meetings, budget approvals, the vendor who didn't show up. Stormwater, it's just there. It's been there since the property was built. It's never really been a problem, and I get it. Because stormwater is invisible until it becomes catastrophic. That pond that looks fine from the road, the banks could be eroding underneath. That outfall you drive past every day, it might be 90% blocked with sediment. That drainage system installed 20 years ago, nobody's checked if it still works the way it was supposed to. And here's what I've learned after doing this work for years. Most property managers feel like imposters when stormwater comes up. They didn't get into this job to become drainage engineers. They got into it to serve communities, to solve problems, to keep things running smoothly. But then you get a call from that county, or that letter from the inspector, or that board member asking why the pond looks different after the last storm. And suddenly, you're responsible for explaining something you were never trained to understand. And if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And more importantly, it's not your fault. Now, a lot of people I talk to, they think stormwater is just a maintenance issue, like mowing the lawn, cleaning the pool, something you handle when you get around to it. But think about it this way. It's a compliance issue with fines up to $2,000 or more per day. It's a liability issue where board members can be held personally responsible. It's a budgetary issue because emergency repairs after a failure can run into 6 figures. And it's a threat to your reputation because when something fails, you're the one who has to answer for it. Treating stormwater like landscaping is exactly why it keeps failing. And here's what's really happening out there. Counties are under pressure from the federal government to enforce MS4 and NPDES regulations. These are laws that have been on the books for years, decades, some of them. But the enforcement, that's new. And it's catching communities completely off guard. I've personally seen properties get hit with remediation requirements that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars for problems they didn't even know they had. Most reserve studies, the ones used to set HOA dues, they don't even account for stormwater repairs. So when that notice of violation arrives, there's no money set aside. The board panics, and someone has to tell the residents that dues are going up or there's a special assessment coming. That someone is usually the property manager, the same person who was never given the tools, the training, or the budget to prevent it in the first place. So here's how we got into this. A few years back, we got called in to help a community that had just received a county violation. They were in crisis mode. 90 days to remediate, no budget, no plan, and a board that wanted answers that nobody had. We helped them through it, developed a plan, coordinated the work, got them into compliance, but what stuck with me wasn't the project itself. It was realizing this community had no idea they were at risk. None. The problems had been building for years. The erosion was gradual, The sediment accumulation was invisible from the surface. The outfalls were technically failing, but still working enough that nobody noticed. And then, one storm, one inspection, and suddenly it was a crisis. After that project, we started looking around. We identified dozens of other properties in similar situations. We reached out, we warned property managers, sent them official documentation, even introduced some of them to county stormwater officials directly. Most still delayed action. I'll be honest with you, that delay is going to be expensive for them. But it made something very clear to us. The problem isn't that people don't care about their stormwater systems. The problem is they don't know what they don't know. They don't know their compliance status. They don't know what a regulator would find. They don't know what's urgent versus what can wait. And without that information, they can't make good decisions. They can't budget properly. They can't protect themselves. So we built something to fix that. We call it a stormwater compliance assessment. And here's what it actually is. We come to your property, we inspect your stormwater systems the way a regulator would, but without the penalties. We look at everything. Your ponds, retention basins, outfalls, inlets, swales, drainage systems, every piece of stormwater infrastructure on your property. But we don't just look at the obvious stuff. We use what we call a three-dimensional analysis. First, physical infrastructure. Is the structure itself in good shape? Any settlement, cracks, pipe damage, failing control structures? Second, hydraulic behavior. How is water actually moving through this system? Where's the sediment depositing? Is there capacity for major storm events? Third, ecological indicators. What's the vegetation telling us? Is there invasive species pressure? Are there water quality warning signs? Most inspectors only look at surface conditions. We look at the whole picture because that's what determines whether you're actually compliant or just lucky. And then we document everything. Photos, measurements, analysis. You get a compliance status report that tells you exactly where you stand, yes or no. Specific violations identified. You get a prioritized remediation roadmap that ranks everything by urgency and risk, so you know what exactly needs attention now versus what can be phased out over time. You get budget forecasting, 3 to 5 year projections so you can actually plan, not just react. And you get board-ready summary, plain English, no technical jargon, something you can walk into your next meeting and actually use. 20 days from when we start, you have everything you need to know exactly what you're dealing with and exactly what to do about it. No more guessing. No more hoping the inspector doesn't show up. No more explaining problems you didn't know existed. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. We don't have the budget for this right now. I get it. Budgets are tight. Everything's competing for the same dollars. But let me ask you this. What's the budget for a notice of violation? $2,000 per day in fines? Mandatory emergency remediation? Legal exposure? 6-figure repair costs that nobody planned for? The assessment is a fraction of what one violation costs. And it tells you before the county does whether you're at risk. That's not an expense. That's insurance. Some of you might be thinking, we've never had a problem before. That's what every property says, until they do. These systems fail gradually. The erosion doesn't happen overnight. The sediment accumulates over years, and enforcement wasn't intense until recently. The fact that you haven't had a violation doesn't mean you're compliant. It might just mean you haven't been inspected yet. Now, you might also be wondering, why isn't this free? Other companies offer free consultations, right? Here's the difference. A free consultation is a sales pitch disguised as an assessment. Someone walks your property, points at things, gives you verbal recommendations, and then quotes you a project. What you don't get is documentation. You don't get measurements. You don't get something you can show your board or hand to a regulator. This assessment has standalone value, whether you ever work with us again or not. You'll have professional documentation that proves you've done your due diligence. You'll have a prioritized action plan. You'll have the information to make actual decisions. And if you do need remediation work, we already have the measurements and analysis to give you accurate quotes, not estimate based on guesses. Last thing, some of you are thinking, maybe later, when things calm down, when the budget cycle resets. Here's what I've learned. There's never a perfect time. But there is a cost to waiting. Every storm that passes makes erosion worse. Every month without inspection is another month of not knowing. And enforcement isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. The communities that act early will save the most. This isn't about fear. It's about being proactive instead of reactive. It's about protecting yourself, your community, and your reputation before someone else forces you to. So let me tell you exactly what happens when you move forward. Click the button below and schedule a brief call with our team. We'll ask a few questions about your property, what you're dealing with, what your concerns are, whether you've had any violations or issues in the past. If we're a good fit, and honestly, if your property has stormwater infrastructure in the southeast, you probably are, we'll schedule an assessment. Within 20 days, you'll have everything. The full compliance report, the prioritized roadmap, the budget forecasting, the board-ready summary. You'll walk into your next board meeting with actual answers, documentation, a plan. You'll be the manager who got ahead of this, who saw what was coming and handled it before it became a crisis. Think about what that means for you. No more anxiety about what regulators might find. No more explaining problems you didn't know existed. No more scrambling to justify emergency repairs to a board that's already frustrated. Just clarity, control, and the confidence that comes from knowing exactly where you stand. The button is right below this video. Click it, schedule your call, and let's find out what's really going on with your property before the county does. I'll see you on the other side.